I mean, I guess. I already used this joke though, so it doesn't really make sense to use it again. For our next foray into the world of an interactive Bikini Bottom, well, we're gonna take a bit of a step backwards. Let's be real here, SpongeBob SquarePants Battle for Bikini Bottom has always been a bit of an anomaly. We have a quality 3D platformer based on a licensed property in an era where collectathon platformers were losing a lot of their appeal. And in recent years, people have accepted more and more that, sure, the franchise has pumped out a ton of video games because it's a successful cartoon, of course it has. But Battle for Bikini Bottom in particular has transcended that. And a lot of that I think is due to the speedrun community. They took that game from obscurity and made it a big deal to where we are today, and that is just really cool. So while on paper giving a SpongeBob game a full-blown remake may seem a bit outlandish, once you consider all of that information, Rehydrated makes perfect sense. During this era where remaking classics like Crash and Spyro is all the rage, the ingredients are all here for something really special. So, is SpongeBob SquarePants Battle for Bikini Bottom Rehydrated as good as we all anticipated? Okay, so, to get the important stuff out of the way, this is still Battle for Bikini Bottom, exactly as you remember it. For better or for worse. We have 9 open levels filled with a linear main objective as well as multiple side objectives, all taking place in different iconic locations throughout the entirety of Bikini Bottom. Plankton's robots are going out on a rampage, so collect as many shiny things as you possibly can to go inside the chum bucket and save the day. And as much as this next part is gonna sound like a bit of a backhanded compliment, the thing that made the original Battle for Bikini Bottom feel kinda special was that it wasn't garbage. Licensed video games of that era are supposed to not be good, so when one comes around that is competently made in a fan-favorite genre, the collectathon platformer, then yeah, you're gonna get a lot of praise, and a lot of that is deserved. It doesn't feature a ton of mind-blowing platforming mechanics that rival some of the best you can find in similar titles. It was just simply enjoyable, running and jumping through jellyfish fields, missing the bus out of Rock Bottom, going down the multiple slides in Sand Mountain. And you don't only play as SpongeBob, but Patrick and Sandy as well, each with their own pros and cons. There's some basic puzzle solving, some simplistic combat, a plethora of challenges to go for that, for the most part, never really get too difficult, but they do give you plenty of things to go for in each stage, which is nice. Like looking for all of Patrick's hidden socks, that really encourages exploration. It ticks off nearly all of the boxes that makes a collectathon platformer what it is. And also, traveling the world of Bikini Bottom, that's just a simple pleasure in life. This game satisfies that oddly specific niche. Look at this. More like SpongeBob Dehydrated, am I right? The original title nailed all of those rudimentary platforming tropes very well, and I can safely say that for the most part, Rehydrated gives off that same exact vibe. So if you're looking for a modern way to play Battle for Bikini Bottom, this will fit the bill just fine. The problem though, is that it doesn't really do much more than that. There are sort of 2 main topics to Rehydrated, which I didn't anticipate. The original game is still here, so if you're a fan, that's awesome, that's really good news. But in regards to it being a remake slash remaster, sorry, I'm really not impressed. Obviously, the most noticeable improvement here is with the graphics, and yeah, it looks pretty fantastic. Once again though, for the most part. Every model has been recreated to represent the character's more modern appearances, and the worlds really pop out a whole lot more thanks to the more advanced lighting and the redone textures. Some areas though, I would actually argue, don't look as good, and I think it's all due to the overall contrast. The original was a whole lot more muted in a lot of those locations, but in areas like Goo Lagoon, I think things are a little bit too bright in this one for my taste in comparison. Sand Mountain also introduces a pretty heavy level of fog, which is kind of strange. Normally I would assume remakes would get rid of fog, but it was never there in the original, so it just comes off as a weird choice. I know I'm pulling at hairs here, and overall, it is very good, but it seems like for every upgrade that was done in Rehydrated, there are some questionable decisions made alongside it. Like, let's look at the cutscenes. A handful of them are fully reanimated from top to bottom, and they look excellent. Patrick looks a bit odd at points. Something about his teeth just rubs me in a wrong way that it never did before. I don't like it, but for the most part, these are great. An absolute highlight of the overall package. SpongeBob is a cartoon after all. These really come off as an animated CG movie. The basic talking scenes, however, these I'm a bit more indifferent to. The developers went ahead and made many more expressions for each of the characters to better reflect what's actually going on in the conversation. I mean, hell, looking back in the original, half the time, SpongeBob wasn't even looking at who he was talking to. But it's the lip syncing that's the problem for me. Actually, the lack of it. Again, I know this is ultimately not a big deal. I will admit that I am fully biased here. I adore what happened with Spyro in the Reignited trilogy, and one of the more impressive changes that was implemented was including lip sync on top of the looping animations. It made the characters feel a lot more alive, I guess I would say. Stuff like this just shows its roots as a PS2 era title, and I would say in the world of modern day remakes, the bar is set a bit higher than that. The text boxes don't follow the lines of dialogue either, which seems like a really weird oversight. And what is this mustache animation? Just put the mustache on him. That doesn't look good. The movie game did that just fine many years ago. And also, really minor nitpick, they didn't do the crazy zoom in for the infamous Mrs. Puff don't ask questions line, nullifying why it was even funny in the first place. It's just not the same. I do really like the option to have everybody speak Japanese. SpongeBob is my favorite anime. I'm definitely shining the most spotlight on the graphics here because overall they're a whole lot better and the game is gorgeous, but the problem is that nothing else has changed. The voice acting, sadly, has not been redone. Once again, for the most part, this isn't a major problem, but it does introduce a couple of things I do wish were different. For one, the lack of new recordings kind of placed the cutscene animators in a bit of a corner. Since there's no freedom in how those characters are delivering their lines, every scene comes off like a shot-for-shot recreation, rather than a reimagining, lacking some of the more cartoony spots that were really good in remakes like Crash Bandicoot. This also means that Mermaid Man and Mr. Krabs still have their wildly inaccurate voices. It became sort of a funny joke knowing that the original sounded the way it did, aka,
"No more Krusty Krab means no more fry cooking for you."
Bad, but I really don't understand any excuse here. With the entire cast still reprising their roles in the cartoon, I feel like it would be better if the lines were recreated here. I don't know what the problem is. I am aware that unfortunately the voice actor behind Mermaid Man passed away years ago, and Nickelodeon ever since has not given the character a voice in the cartoon. But I don't know, man, I just think those two characters in particular needed to be fixed. Most of the characters' deliveries were already great and often really funny. But I also think you're seeing a trend here of me saying this game is good because the original was good, rather than saying how good Rehydrated is. And this all culminates in the gameplay. Looking back at the original, there were definite problems. The tiki area in Kelp Forest could be pretty annoying. Some of the sliding sections are way more frustrating than they have any right to be. Platforming in Squidward's Dream can sometimes be a total nightmare. The rolling ball puzzle in the Mermalayer brings out a frustration in me that I haven't seen out of myself since Super Mario Sunshine. And in Rehydrated, all of that still applies. All of the effort here seems to simply go to the aesthetics and nothing else. Some of these segments are just as annoying as ever before. This part still sucks a whole lot. I did find out how to skip the tiki section in Kelp Forest, so that's something positive. It's not as bad as some people say it is, but the problems are still there. Come on, man, it's not that bad, get good. And if anything, there are even more issues here. The camera in the bungee jump sections can often screw up. There was this one time I loaded into a slide without realizing it and then flew off into my death. They didn't prepare me for this. The momentum for Sandy's lasso swings, one of my favorite parts of the original game, are completely off and they feel forced now. Things that, without direct comparison, probably don't come off as big problems, like everything I've said in this video up until now. But I played that original version not that long ago, so my perspective is a bit different. All of this makes Battle for Bikini Bottom Rehydrated kind of feel unfinished. And that goes double for the Switch version too. Choppier frame rate, the shadows are worse, pixelated edges on all the models. It is simply not as on par with the other consoles as it really should have been. And the thing is, I don't know if this is the fault of the relative newcomers, Purple Lamp Studios, or Nickelodeon not giving out enough of a budget because they simply wanted this game to release before the new movie. Who can really say? It's all speculation on my part. Actually, the movie also got delayed, so you probably should have just done that with the game. It would have been fine. I'm just saying. They did add some fresh memes into the idle animations, so that right there is the best part about Rehydrated. But what about one of the major selling points here? The return of Robo Squidward. This boss was cut from the original version, and with a remake happening here, there was a promise to bring it back, which sounded super exciting. Oh man, are we gonna get like a new secret area? Like maybe a spot under the chum bucket? Is this gonna be some major new threat? Are we gonna have some extra spatulas to collect on top of this? Oh, what about Patrick's dream? That location was also cut from the original game, so bringing that back and having Robo Squidward be a boss of that stage would make total sense. That would be perfect. Oh man, this is so exciting. I can't wait to see what we're gonna get. No. So, exclusive to Rehydrated, we have a brand new multiplayer Horde mode. And it's terrible. Every character more or less plays the same. Don't play as Squidward because his clarinet makes the same 3 notes over and over again, and it is the worst thing on the planet. It is incredibly repetitive, lacks any amount of skill to get through. It goes on for about 40 to 45 minutes, and then you just get sent back to the title screen after completing it. That's the entire mode. It is 100% an absolute waste of time. But hey, Robo Squidward's there, so they weren't lying. Man, reviews for this game have been all over the place, and it's kind of easy to see why. The original Battle for Bikini Bottom succeeded because in a world where successful platformers were evolving to incorporate elements from other genres, it was frankly great seeing a licensed property stick to the basics and give us something solid. So as a result of this game more or less being the same, newcomers will still enjoy themselves. Nowadays though, I would argue the playfield is completely different, and I think, as a remaster, Rehydrated comes up short. Crash, Spyro, Medieval, hell, even having a simple graphical update on top of plenty of quality of life improvements like we got with Xenoblade was more in line with what I was expecting here. In the grand scheme of things, yeah, this is probably still the definitive way to play this game, but that's more so because it's now available on modern consoles and PC, rather than being impressed with the work that was done here. If you haven't played Battle for Bikini Bottom yet, Rehydrated is still a fine pick. Personally, I think I still prefer the original version, but that's just because I'm an absolute sucker for older 3D platformers during that generation. That entire era was jank as all hell, and man, SpongeBob fit in perfectly. Rehydrated's just okay in my opinion. Battle for Bikini Bottom is still one of the finer games in the franchise, and Rehydrated's not a bad pick, so either way you go, you're in for a decent time, which is a whole lot more than you can say for some of the other games in the franchise. And I did sort of promise that I would start covering these and a whole lot more, so I guess now's as good a time as any to start making good on that promise, huh? You know, it looks like Some Call Me Johnny over on his channel is starting to tease more SpongeBob content of his own, so it looks like we have a bit of a race here, methinks. You may have won the Kingdom Hearts race, but I'm gonna win the SpongeBob race, you hear me? This is serious. This is 100% totally serious. Oh boy. 25.